Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me. This is your Society Jester, and as you can see, we are still looking at 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Basic Rules. Hopefully you've been able to watch a couple of the previous episodes. We talked about some of the differences in this 5th edition as opposed to 4th edition and 3.5 and 3.0 editions, and also how we go about making characters in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and a couple examples. So hopefully, if you haven't watched these, give that a chance and see what you think. Well, in this episode, we're going to talk about combat and the rules for combat now. And to help me along with this process here, you can see I'm going to be using our app Roll20 to kind of show you what we're talking about. So if you got the basic rules for 5th edition, of course you can download those from the internet, from the wizard site, and you can kind of follow along if you're not sure about what I'm talking about. So 5th edition, as I mentioned in all of my previous episodes, 5th edition is streamlined and it is very rule-less. They don't include a lot of the fluff rules and everything else. It's streamlined. It makes the game flow faster. It makes players make decisions quicker because there's not a lot of that extra fluff to it. Just do what you're going to do and get on with it so we can move on, and everything's kind of been streamlined and everything. So like every other version of any role-playing game out there, combat is determined by initiative order, the highest number going first, followed by, the next highest one, next highest one, next highest one. That is all based upon your dexterity modifier. And you can see here, if you look at a couple of the characters and the character sheets here, he's got a 2 here, so no bonuses, 2 from his dexterity. So obviously when he rolls initiative, he is going to get his 20-sided dice plus whatever his roll is on, plus the 2 for his bonus, plus whatever he rolls on the 20-sided dice. So that's going to determine the initiative order. Pretty straightforward. So on your turn, you can do basically 2 things. You have a move and you have an action. A move and an action. Of course, you can always do a free action depending on what your DM assigns as a free action. If you want to talk or give gestures or whatever. There is also, very importantly, bonus actions. So some of your abilities or spells or a part of your class implementations might give you a bonus action. And if it gives you a bonus action, you can still take your move and your one other action. So, for example, if your bonus action says, as a bonus action, you can move 10 feet. So you can do that sometime in your turn. But it must be listed specifically. You don't just get a bonus action. You must have some kind of class or racial feat or racial ability, I guess I should say, that's going to give you a extra bonus action. So yes, everybody's going to have a movement speed. If we just look at these characters here, and the blue bubble is their listed their movement speed. A typical movement speed for a medium-sized creature is going to be 30 feet. And based upon your race, that might be altered somewhat, and it might also be altered by the armor that you're wearing, and might encumber you to slow you down as well. So you can see this dwarf here has a base speed of 25 feet. This human here has a base speed of 30 feet, and Ikawa here, who is a he is a high elf, has a base movement speed of 35 feet. You can on your turn do several things, a movement and also an action. You can also declare what they call a dash, which is basically you're going to take your move and then you're going to take another move. So it's just a move action And for your second action, for one action you're going to move, and your second action you're going to spend that action to move again. So whatever your movement speed is, if it's say 25, you move 25 feet and then do another move of 25 feet. So that's what they call basically a double move or an action. You also have every character, every monster, every participant in combat also gains what they call a reaction. So you have one reaction that you can do. You cannot do another reaction until the start of your next turn. And of course, the most common reaction is going to be an attack of opportunity. So just like several other versions of Dungeons and Dragons, every character is assumed to have threatened squares around them. And for most characters, it's going to be, depending on their weapon they choose, it's going to be simply a 5-foot square here. So I'm going to put this little aura around him. So this orc grunt here, you can see, will have threatened squares anywhere in the purple. And anybody that leaves that square, any purple square, during his turn, the orc can use a reaction, of course, once, to get a swing on his enemy, basically. So if we take Derek here, and Derek decides to move into that square, he's fine. He can actually move all the way around. He can do whatever he wants inside there without restrictions. He just can't enter the purple area and then leave the purple area. If he leaves the purple area, the orc grunt, assuming he still has his reaction available, can get a free attack of opportunity on them. There are weapons in the game, like if we look at this pikeman here, there are weapons in the game who actually have what they call reach. And reach basically, let's change the color here so it's a little easier to see. Let's choose this darker blue, I guess. Alright, that's not very good. Let's try something a little darker. Let's try this bright green. There we go. So a creature with that's holding a weapon with reach is not only going to threaten the squares that are adjacent to him, but also the squares that are adjacent to those as well. So this pikeman here has a threatening square, threatening area of all of these squares around it. So if this orc archer was to move into that, he's fine. Of course, he can move anywhere in there and not be subject to an attack of opportunity, which is new in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Some of the other editions, if you moved into a square that was threatened and then you moved into another square that was threatened, that can cause an attack of opportunity. As of right now, I'm sure there will be feats and abilities and different things that will come out for more character classes that will change these basic rules, but we're talking about the basic rules of combat here. Of course, like I mentioned, some of the feats and character classes and character abilities might change this, but for the basic rules, as long as you stay within someone's threatened area, they will not, of course, get an attack of opportunity. They will only get an attack of opportunity if you leave their actual threatened area. Also, new to Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, you can now break up your move and your action. Before, in the previous versions of Dungeons and Dragons, if it's your turn, let's say it's Surge's turn here, who is a halfling wizard, he would have to take his move action, 10, 20, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 feet, and then he would cast his spell. If Surge was staying here and he only wanted to move 10 feet and cast his spell, that would be it for him. He would move his 10 feet, he would cast his spell, he would lose the rest of his movement. 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, you can now break up your move. So if I have 25 feet, I could move 10 feet, I could cast my spell, and then I would have 15 feet remaining, and I could then move the remaining 15 feet. So you can break up your movement now with your actions. Of course, Derek here, if he is a fighter, if he spends 5, 10 movement to move up there, do his attack, and then decides to move back, of course he's going to be subject to an attack of opportunity, but it's still legally, he can do that. The way the 5th edition handles difficult terrain is basically for every foot of difficult terrain you go into, it costs you 1 additional foot of movement. So Surge here has a movement of 25 feet. We can say this is not difficult terrain, so he moves 5 feet. This is difficult terrain because he's got to kind of go over this log here and stuff. He's going to spend 5 to go into this space, and he's going to spend an extra 5. So it's going to basically cost him 10 feet of movement to move there. So he's up to 15. And then, of course, difficult terrain to go here. That's 25. And, of course, his turn would be done. It is by foot, so if you have a situation where you have certain things, for example, maybe this space here, if the DM rules, okay, you only have 2 feet to go over the log here because the log is only 2 feet wide, so it would cost him 4 feet of movement to move into there. If you want to get that specific, that's fine. For me personally as a DM, if there's any difficult terrain in the hex, I'm just gonna charge them basically double to move into that space, just for ease of play, because I'm not going to keep track of exactly how many feet. Now there might be certain situations you need to do that in, but for as a general rule, you can do it foot by foot, or however you decide to DM it. One thing you can do now, during any one of your actions, you can interact with an object or a feature of the environment for free. So examples of that might be opening a door, drawing a weapon, drawing or sheathing a sword, opening or closing a door, withdraw a potion from your backpack, pick up a dropped axe, remove a ring from your finger, snuff some food in your mouth, plant a banner in the ground, just things like that. Drink ale, throw a lever, switch, put a torch, pull a torch, extinguish a small flame, put on a mask, put on a hood, things, just quick things like that you can interact with the environment. You can only do this once during one of either your move action or your regular action. Of course, this is subject to your DM approval. You can't do more specific things like try to unlock a locked door. That's not considered a interaction with the environment type action. That's more would take more time and stuff to be able to do that. Let's say, for example, you are knocked prone. The way they handle prone in this game, let's see. I'll just assume this orc grunt. We'll just turn him. Let's just do it this way. Let's see if I can find a prone. There we go. Doop. There we go. We'll just use this as an example. So if our dwarven cleric decides to step up here and attack this prone skeleton, the way they handle prone now is, as long as you are adjacent to that prone character, you have advantage against them. If you are not adjacent to someone that is knocked down or someone that is prone, you have disadvantage to attack that character. Let me just check that rule really quickly and make sure I'm saying that correctly. Hang on just a sec. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the rule. I can't specifically find it right this second, but we'll probably come across it later on. The way you handle prone is if you are prone and you decide to basically move, you're going to crawl. It's going to take 1 extra foot for every foot that you crawl. So if this skeleton wants to crawl forward, it's going to basically cost him 10 movement to move into that space there, because it's 1 foot for 1 foot. If you're talking about going into difficult terrain, of course, that again is going to be doubled for being into difficult terrain. To stand up from being prone costs you half of your movement points. So if you have a movement speed of 30, to stand up costs you 15 movement points to stand up. You can't stand up if you don't have enough movement points left, or your speed is less than half of your movement for whatever reason. You will, let's see. Okay, moving around other creatures here. You can move into and through allies' spaces, or I guess the better way to put it, actually, is non-hostile creatures. They don't have to be allied, they just have to be non-hostile. So if you have some NPCs that might be neutral or whatever, you could move through their spaces, as long as they're not hostile. And it doesn't cost you anything additional. You cannot move into or through an enemy, a hostile creature space, unless it is 2 sizes larger than you or smaller than you, and that it is also considered difficult terrain to move into that space, any of the spaces that that creature occupies. So for example, if this orc run for whatever reason is a gigantic, which would be a 3x3 here, which is going to be 2 sizes larger than a medium size, you could move into those spaces and actually through his actual spaces, but of course, let's get rid of his aura there, so it might make it a little easier to see. There we go. So if I was there and I wanted to move through this guy behind him, it's going to cost me double. It's going to cost me 10, 20, and obviously I couldn't quite make it through because I don't have enough movement to make it through. But if we were maybe this quick little elf here, it could cost us difficult terrain 10, difficult terrain 20, difficult terrain 30, and then another 5. You could walk right through that enemy space. So if they're not 2 sizes larger, you cannot move into this space with an enemy. You cannot also end your space in a friendly or non-hostile creature space. So you can't enter it if you have to end the space. So for example, if Derek here has 25 movement, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Oh, no, he would end there, so he can't actually move into that space. He can move up here, of course, or down here. The way they handle diagonals is 1 for 1. So in this game, that would be 5 movement. Anywhere that Derek goes to move into an adjacent space is going to be a 5 foot of movement there. So let's see. You can squeeze into smaller spaces. There's some rules about that. Basically, you can squeeze into a size that is 1 size smaller than your size. While you're in there, you must spend 1 extra foot for every foot you move. So again, 1 for 1 extra. You have disadvantage on your attack rolls and your dexterity saving throws. And attack rolls against the creature have advantage. So you're basically squeezing through a little corridor that's maybe just 2 or 3 feet wide for a normal sized creature. While you're in there, some bad things are going to happen to you. So that's diagonal movement, threatened areas around you. Some things to note. If you are shooting a ranged and you are adjacent to an enemy within 5 feet, and this is different than threatening zone. So like say for example this orc archer wants to shoot at the pikeman. Even though the pikeman has 10 foot of reach, he has no penalty. But if he's adjacent to the pikeman and wants to shoot his bow, you're going to do any kind of ranged attacks to an adjacent space with disadvantage. So I've used that term quite a bit so far, and I actually haven't ever actually talked about what disadvantage or advantage is. Basically, for 5th edition, as they've streamlined everything and kind of made it a lot easier to play and figure out the rules for everyone. Advantage is you're basically going to roll 2 20-sided dice, and you're going to take the higher of those results. If you have disadvantage, the exact opposite, you're going to roll 2 20-sided dice, and you're going to take the lower of the results. So in this case, if the Orc Archer was to shoot at the pikeman, he's actually going to be rolling 20. He's going to be rolling twice and take the lower of the results. So obviously, you roll the 15 and a 1, he's got to take the 1 and obviously makes a miss there. So disadvantage and advantage. Interesting enough with disadvantage and advantage is you can have multiple disadvantages or multiple advantages, and they still, if you have both of them, advantage and disadvantage, no matter how many you have of them, they cancel one another out. So for example, if the Orc Archer has advantage because he's got a feat that shooting at someone within 15 feet gives him advantage, but he also has disadvantage because he's adjacent to the pikeman now, so the advantage and the disadvantage cancel out. He would just get a normal roll. And even if the Orc Archer had 12 disadvantages, he's blinded, he is adjacent to the pikeman, he's only got 1.5 arms, his bow's cracked, whatever the disadvantages are, as long as he has one advantage and multiple disadvantages, or one disadvantage and multiple advantages, they all cancel out. So it doesn't matter how many of one or the other. You could just simply go, if I have advantage, I have disadvantage, doesn't matter how many of each I got, they all cancel one another out for ease of playing again and for the ease of the rules. What else do we want to talk about? Oh, let's talk about the way they do critical hits now. So anytime you roll a natural 20 on your dice roll, it is considered a critical hit. A critical hit will automatically allow you roll double your normal damage. Of course, you won't get to add your ability modifier more than once. And if there are any special damage dice, such as sneak attack, these are also doubled. So in this case, if Derek, let's look at his weapon here. He has the Warhammer that does 1d8. If he rolls a natural 20, he's going to roll 2d8 and add his modifier, strength modifier of +3, I believe it was. So that's how they handle critical hits. There is no confirmation roll. Anytime you roll a natural 20, it just happens. So you can see that advantage and disadvantage can be quite helpful, because if you are doing lots of attacks with advantage, you're going to be rolling 2 20-sided dice, which basically gives you a 1 in 10 chance of rolling a 20 and getting a critical hit off of that. And so you might get more critical hits. Other actions you can take in combat are, obviously, you're going to have attacks. You can cast a spell. You can dash, which we already talked about, which is basically a move and then another move. You can disengage. Yes, that was the other thing we definitely wanted to talk about here. Let's go back and put this Orc Aura in. Let's say for whatever reason Derek is here and he's within the threatening space of this Orc Grunt, and he decides he wants to move away. One of the actions he can take is a Disengage Action. If you take a Disengage Action, your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks for the rest of your turn. You're just assumed to be, dodging other people, keeping a wary eye on them. You lose your attack, but disengaging could be quite helpful here. So you can see Derek, he's got a speed of, say, 25 feet. He says he's going to disengage from the Orc Grunt. He can go 5 feet, 10, 15, which of course goes into this guy's threatening square. Let's change his to, say, another color. So he goes into this Orc Grunt square, and then leaves there. So he would have normally got one attack of opportunity from leaving this space and going into this space from this Orc Grunt. And then, of course, leaving this space and going into this space, he would have got another attack of opportunity from this Orc Grunt. Again, assuming they have their reaction ability still available. Yes, their reactions. You only have one reaction, so if for whatever reason Derek here decides to move out of that Orc's Grunt's threatening space, he gets an attack of opportunity. Then, of course, Surge could then just walk through there, not having to worry about the Orc Grunt getting another attack of opportunity on him. Of course, again, there'll be creatures, there'll be class feats and everything to come that will change and alter some of these combat rules, I am sure. But as far as if you start your turn within the threatening space, you can maneuver around that enemy without having to worry about getting an attack of opportunity, as long as you don't disengage or leave the threatened area of that enemy. Let's see. So other actions is attack, dashing, disengaging, dodging. When you take the dodge action, you focus entirely on avoiding your attacks. Until the start of your next turn, any attack roll made against you has disadvantage if you can see the attacker, and you make your dexterity saving throws with advantage. You lose all these benefits, of course, if you become incapacitated or if you're dropped to 0 hit points or anything like that. You can help one another if you forego your action. This is an action again. Let's say that Blackrock and Derek are here. They're attacking this Orc. Derek's turn. He decides that he's going to forego his action and he's going to help Blackrock with his action when it's Blackrock's turn. So when Blackrock goes to attack this Orc, because he's being helped by Derek, guess what he gets? He doesn't get a +1 to attack, +2, minus whatever, blah, blah, blah. Easy and simple, 5th edition. You get advantage. That's it. You're being helped by him, you're going to get advantage. You can try to hide as an action. You're going to roll your dexterity stealth check and attempt to hide. And there's some specific rules on trying to hide. You can ready an action, just like a lot of the other versions of Dungeons and Dragons, where you're going to have a certain trigger that's going to happen. You're going to then interrupt that action and take your action. So if Derek here says, okay, I'm going to ready an action, if anybody moves up adjacent to me, I'm going to swing my battle axe at him. So, then it becomes the Orc Grunt's turn. The Orc Grunt goes, 1, 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. As soon as he moves there, Derek interrupts and goes ahead and gets his attack in before the Orc Grunt would obviously get his attack. So ready in action, a trigger that happens, you get to take your reaction right after the trigger finishes, or you ignore the trigger. Remember, you can only take one reaction per round. So this is a reaction to your ready. So if the Orc Grunt moves up there, you can take a reaction. But of course, if Derek spends his reaction earlier, then he's not going to have his ready action anymore. Of course, you can search. You can use an object. These are other, obviously, things that you can do inside of combat. Your attack rolls are going to be based upon your stats modifiers. Again, if you're doing a melee attack, more than likely it's going to be strength based, although there are some weapons that are versatile, which allow you to use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier. If you're using your ranged weapon, you're probably going to be using your dexterity, and not probably, you're going to be using your dexterity modifier to your attack. Roll a 20-sided dice. You're going to compare your you're going to add your modifier to it, and you're going to compare it to your opponent's armor class. Armor class in 5th edition is basically going to be, if we go into inventory here, each kind of armor that you have is going to give you a base armor class. That is going to give you your armor class, and then you're going to add any shields if you're carrying a shield on it. And based upon what armor you use, you may or may not add your dexterity modifier to it. For example, in this case here we have chainmail armor, which is heavy, and heavy armor you don't add your dexterity modifier, so it's really good for characters with low dexterity to wear heavier armor because they're not going to get any bonuses anyways. And you're going to add up your base armor class, and whether or not you get a dexterity modifier to add to that, and you're going to add that total together and come up. So for example here with Derek here, we have chainmail armor, which is a base of 16. If he has a shield, it's going to give you a bonus of 2. Shields now give you a bonus of 2 to your armor class, which they always should have done many years ago. And so his total is obviously 16 plus 2 is 18. He's not going to get any bonuses for his dexterity because he's wearing heavy armor. 5th edition, when you are hit points, obviously, just like every other edition of D&D, is going to be basically the amount of damage you can take before you are knocked unconscious. So in this situation, we'll use Blackrock here as our example. You can see Blackrock is a first level human fighter. He currently has 11 hit points. That is his maximum number, and that is his total of hit points. Whenever he is knocked down to 0 hit points or lower, he is knocked unconscious, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. If for whatever reason during the attack, if you're ever knocked to the number below 0 equal to your maximum hit points, in this case remember he had 11, so if he goes to minus 11 hit points, he's instantly killed. So for example, if he had say 2 hit points left and a monster critical hit him and did 14 points of damage, 14 from 2 is minus 12, which is going to be higher than his minus 11. He's instantly killed. If this number that is totaled out is not enough to kill him, it's just assumed they go to 0. So let's say, for example, this character has 4 hit points left. He takes 6 points of damage, which will take him to minus 2, okay, which is not enough to kill him, so he immediately goes back to 0. He is knocked unconscious, he's laying on the ground. Then what he's basically going to be doing is what they call death saving throws. On a death saving throw, when it's his turn to act next time, he was going to roll a 20-sided dice, and if you roll 2 through 9, basically that's counted as a failure. In fact, I think there's an even somewhere on this chart kind of a explanation to kind of show you. Here we go. So you're basically, if you have a failure, you're going to just mark that in. If you roll 2 through 9, it's a failure. If you roll 10 through 19, it's a success. So 2 through 9 is a failure. 10 through 19 is a success. If you roll a natural 1, it is counted as 2 failures. So a natural 1 is counted as 2 failures. If you roll a natural 20 on your death saving throw, you are immediately knocked up to 1 hit point, and you're no longer unconscious. You can start taking actions again, etc., etc. So rolling a 20, obviously very good if you are playing your character. Again, 2 through 9 is a failure. If you roll a 1, it's a double failure. And you're going to do that until you get either 3 successes or you're going to have 3 failures. Upon that, if you reach successes, you have no longer need to make dex saving throws, and you're just stabilized. You're still unconscious, but you're stabilized enough that you're not going to bleed out, you're not going to die. If you roll, obviously, 3 failures, and the 3rd failure, you have you've been killed. You've died. If while you're unconscious and you're making death saving throws, if you ever receive any kind of healing by a spell or magical means, you are immediately restored back up. So if you got if you're at 0 hit points, you are immediately getting, say you got healed for 6 points, you're just knocked up to 6 points, and you don't need to make death saving throws anymore, whether that's by a potion or magical cure light wounds or whatever the spell happens to be. If you get any kind of healing, you are immediately don't have to make death saving throws anymore. What else was I going to say about death saving throws? Oh yes, if you ever take damage while you're unconscious, again, this number resets to 0 every time. So in this case, if this character is ever down and he takes damage for whatever reason, if it's 11 points or higher, the character is just going to die. Not only will that happen, that would be bad. Let's say he's at 0 and for whatever reason the enemies cast a fireball spell or whatever, and it ends up doing 10 points of damage. Obviously that's not enough to kill him, but it automatically, anytime you are unconscious and you take damage, it automatically counts as a failure. If that attack against you is a critical, it automatically counts as 2 failures. So if you're on your first turn, you roll a failure, and sometime before the next turn an enemy critical hits you, you are just killed, because it counts as 2 failures on that as well. So very easy to understand. You're basically trying to make successes or get some kind of magical healing before you get your failures. If you roll a natural 20, again, you're just knocked up to 1 hit point and you're good to go. You no longer have to make any more saving throws unless you're knocked down again. And on failures, 2 through 9, and a 1 is going to count as 2 failures. So definitely want to make sure you don't let your other players get to a situation where they're starting to accumulate failures, because on that 3rd failure they'll be killed. And especially if they have 2 failures and they take any damage whatsoever, they're just going to die. So you want to make sure you can start getting your people up. But I still think it's a fair way to keep some interest into what's going on. Players aren't going to die right off the bat. Of course, I think it's a fair way to do this, where there's still a chance that bad things are going to happen, but most likely, if you get some healing, you don't have to worry about it. It'll be okay. If your cleric or your healer gets knocked out, and nobody else has any kind of healing, then it's going to come down to whether or not he rolls successes or failures. And of course, depending on your DM, you might keep these failures and successes unknown to the other players. The other way to actually get a player to stabilize, besides magical means, I should mention this, is you can do a skill check for medicine, and you can basically try to stabilize their opponent, or not your opponent. You could try to stabilize anyone that is unconscious, and you're going to roll a stabilizing a character. You're going to roll a successful DC 10 Wisdom Medicine check. So a DC 10 Wisdom Medicine check. So you can see here, In this case, this character has no bonuses, so it's just going to be a straight up 10 or higher to stabilize another character that's knocked unconscious. That is stabilizing a character without healing, without magical healing or anything like that. That's just trying to bandage him up, trying to make sure he's stabilizes himself. So you can do that without magical potions. It's going to be a Medicine Wisdom DC check of 10. Obviously, if you had a bonus here, it'd make it a little bit slightly easier. A stable creature doesn't make any death saving throws anymore, but still has 0 hit points. He remains unconscious. Creature stops being stable and must start making death saving throws again if they take any kind of damage. A stable creature isn't healed, regains 1 hit point after 1 to 4 hours. So if you stabilize the character and for whatever reason you can't heal him, he will eventually get 1 hit point back in 1d4 hours. You can knock enemy creatures out, just like most other versions of D&D. Most of your common monsters, once they're hit to 0 hit points, they just die, unless of course there might be a special NPC or non-player character or a special villain or whatever. Your DM might decide to have him actually do death saving throws as well. You can knock a creature out when you're simple and easy, just like 5th edition. Anytime you do a death blow that reduces a creature to 0 hit points with a melee attack, the attack can knock the creature out instead of killing it. Of course, you can't do this with a ranged attack or with a spell or anything like this. It has to be a melee attack. The creature will fall unconscious, but is stable. So it's quick and easy, not having to manipulate a whole bunch of silly other stupid rules that we don't want in the combat or into our 5th edition. Let's see if I missed anything here. I'm looking through the of course, the basic rules here to see if there's anything else. There's multiple different kinds of damage type. There's acid, bludgeoning, cold, fire, force, lightning, necrotic, piercing, poison, psychic, radiant, slashing, and thunder right now are the different kinds of damage types. Some creatures or your different PCs based on their race class will sometimes get resistances to certain type of damage. So, like for example, I think skeletons are resistant to piercing damage because you're just trying to stick your spear through their bones. It doesn't do as much damage. So anytime you have resistance to a certain kind of damage, that damage is going to be halved against it. And if you're vulnerable, say like maybe a treatant or something might be vulnerable to fire. If you're vulnerable, absolutely, what's going to happen is you're going to double that kind of damage that is applied against it. Resistance and vulnerability are applied after all other modifiers are applied to the damage, though. So it's the last thing that happens is a doubling or halving, depending on if you're resistant or if you are vulnerable. We talked about critical hits, damage rules. Yep. One thing that yes, let's talk about a few other things here. Got a few things to talk about. 2-weapon fighting. So if your characters decide to do 2-weapon fighting, they must choose light weapons to place in their hands, and of course certain weapons are going to have different stats with them. Some will be two-handed, some will be versatile. Well, you have to have light weapons if you want to do 2-weapon fighting. When you take your attack action, you can attack with the light melee weapon that you're holding in one hand, and then you can immediately use a bonus action to attack with a different light melee weapon that you're holding in the other hand. You don't add your ability modifier to the damage of the bonus attack unless that modifier is negative. If either weapon has a throwing property, you can throw the weapon instead of making a melee attack with it. So if you had 2 light weapons, you could do 2 attacks. First attack, you would do your normal damage and your modifier for your strength. If you have your second attack, then you would just get your normal damage roll, assuming that you hit, but no ability modifier in that. We talked about attacks of opportunity already. You provoke attacks of opportunity unless you take the Disengage action. You also don't provoke an attack of opportunity if you are teleported or when someone or something moves you without using your movement action or reaction. So for example, if Derek is here in the grunt space, this grunt over here uses a blast of wind and knocks Derek back 10 feet. Boom, boom. This is not Derek's movement, so this orc grunt does not get an attack of opportunity. If you're here and you, for whatever reason, have a ring of teleportation and you teleport over here, this again is not an attack of opportunity. So the only time you get an attack of opportunity against you is when you are spending a move action to move out of the threatening area of an enemy. Kind of important. Very easy, again, everything you can see is very easy to understand in 5th edition. It's going to be very easy to explain to people. It's going to be very easy to get new players to play. And I think that's what they were going for, especially with the Player's Handbook. Of course, I think down the line, in the next year or so, we're going to get lots of extra books that are going to add new rules and new feats and new modifications and all that. And some of these rules are going to change. You know, maybe Derek will get a feat that says you can move out of the threatening space of an enemy and not cause an attack of opportunity. So, you know, that'll come down the line, but we're talking about, again, just the D&D basic rules as it stands now with the Player's Handbook to arrive August 19th, just 2 short days away. Grappling rules, we're talking about grappling rules, very easy again. We're talking 5th edition. We try to make everything really smooth and easy. When you want to grapple somebody, you must have at least 1 free hand. You try to seize the target by making a grapple check. It's going to be your strength athletics check against the target's strength athletic check or dexterity aerobics check. So let me show you what that means here. Let's look Blackrock again for an example. He is going to use his strength athletics check to try and physically hold on and grab the creature that's adjacent to him. Of course, he must have a free hand. That hand cannot have a shield on it. Has to be free. He can't be holding a torch or anything like that. Free hand. And you're going to use your strength athletics check. And the opponent gets to choose either athletics strength, because he wants to break through it with his strength, or he can choose aerobics here and use his dexterity to try and be quick and twisty and turn and try to sneak, get out of your grasp. So it's up to the defender to choose either acrobatics or athletics to resist. The grappler can only choose athletic strength. If you grab and you're successful, the subject is then the target is subject to the condition, the grapple condition. The grapple condition basically you're not going to be able to move until released by the target. To escape a grapple creature can use its action to try to escape. To do so, it must succeed on a strength or aerobics check. Yes, athletics or aerobics check, contested by the person who's trying to hold on, which they, again, can only choose athletics. If you do have someone grabbed and they're grappled, you have hold of them. When you move, you can drag or carry the grappled creature with you, but your speed is halved, unless the creature is 2 or more sizes smaller than you. One of the other things you can do is you can try to shove a creature or try to knock it prone by using the attack action. By using the attack action, you make a special melee attack to shove the creature, either to knock it prone or to push it away from you. If you are able to make multiple attacks with an attack, this attack replaces one of them. The target that you are choosing to shove must be no more than one size larger than you, and it must be within your reach. And again, you're going to make a strength athletics check. So you're going to try to use your power, your might, and you're going to contest it against your enemy's strength, athletics, or dexterity aerobics check to try and prevent this. So again, the defender always gets to basically choose either athletics or acrobatics to try and dodge out of the way, or he can try to physically fight you strength versus strength. If you win the contest, you either knock the target prone or you push it 5 feet away from you. So 5 feet away from you, interesting enough, if this orc, let's say Ikawa's up here as well, if Derek forces the orc grunt and pushes him 5 feet away, he could push him 5 feet there. You could push him 5 feet there or 5 feet there. I'm not sure. It doesn't specifically. It doesn't describe what away from you means. I'm just assuming that since he's 5 feet, this is 10 feet away, this is also 10 feet away, and this is also 10 feet away. In fact, this is also 10 feet away, but since Ikawa is there, he couldn't obviously push him into that space. So I'm just assuming as long as he moves him 5 feet further away. And of course, if Derek does this, the orc grunt, and pushes him here, the orc grunt is not subject to an attack of opportunity because it was not a move action that he performed to move out of Ikawa's threatening area. So, of course, by pushing him away, you're not going to be able to get that free attack of opportunity. But there might be other advantages to doing it because, let's say, there's a nice big campfire or something over here, and if you could, grab me this guy. If you can push him into the campfire, obviously your DM might decide to, cause some damage to the orc. Let's bring him to front. There we go. For whatever reason, push him into that space. Maybe he catches on fire. Whatever your DM decides. Cover. If you have cover, you're crouching behind a table, a tree, a log, whatever it happens to be. There are 3 different kinds of cover that you can be performed. If the DM decides you are in half cover, you're going to get a +2 to your armor class. If you're in 3/4 cover, you're going to get a +5 bonus to your armor class and dexterity saving throws. I should mention, not only half cover gives you +2 to armor class and dexterity saving throws. If you're have 3/4 cover, you're going to get a +5 bonus to your armor class and your dexterity saving throws. And if your target has total cover, it can't be targeted directly by an attack or spell, although some spells can reach a target by including them in an area of effect. There is, I think again, because of ease of play, for ease of, just rules, things that we don't need to include. If Surge was using, say, a bow to shoot, there is no cover for allies or enemies. There's no bonus to shooting. If this guy was here, these guys are engaged. There's no penalties shoot into melee or anything like that. I don't believe the obstacle might be a little wall, a large piece of furniture, a narrow tree trunk, or a creature, whether that creature is a friend or an enemy. I guess there is now actually cover from allies. So if Ikawa's in the way here, that would provide ranged cover to half cover to his target there. Obviously, if the orc grunt was there, he would not get a penalty at that point to attack it, and that gives us, more reason for characters to move around inside of combat zones to get better. There is no flanking anymore in this game, but it might not allow enemies to be covered anymore from allies standing in the way. We talked about the ease of grappling, two-weapon fighting. We already did opportunity attacks. Let's see here. Let's look under the range attack really quickly to see. When you make a range attack, you fire a bow or your crossbow, you hurl an axe. Oh yes, this is kind of important here. We'll talk about that here in a second. Range. When you make a ranged attack against targets within a specified range, all of the different ranged weapons have two different range increments. There's a normal range and then there's a long range. For example, a short bow has a range of 80 feet and 320 feet. So anything up to and including 80 feet away is normal range. So this orc archer could shoot that character without any problems. If it's outside your normal range, up to and including your long range, so in this case a short bow, so if it's 85 up to 320 feet away, you're basically shooting with disadvantage. Quick and easy again. You don't just count your distance away and figure out whether or not it's within your normal range. If it's not within your normal range, you're going to have disadvantage to your attack roll. Let's just see if it says anything in here about your attack roll is disadvantaged when your target is beyond your normal range. And of course, in range attacks and close combat, disadvantage on the attack roll if you're within 5 feet of a hostile creature who could see you and who isn't incapacitated. Let's see if there's anything else that we had missed. Hiding, using an object, helping, searching, dodging, disengaging, dashing, readying actions, casting a spell, movement, moving around other creatures. Whether a creature is a friend or an enemy, you can't willingly end your space in its space. If you leave a hostile creature's reach during your move, you provoke an attack of opportunity. We talked about that. Squeezing into small spaces, reactions, moving a position, using different speeds. We're not really going to cover that. Moving between actions, which we talked about, breaking up your moves, and other activities on your turn we talked about. Surprise round, of course, that'll be up to your DM to determine who is surprised when adversaries engage one another. If one side or the other side has a surprise, if you are surprised, you will not get to do, when you are surprised, you can't move or take an action on your first turn of the combat, and you can't take a reaction until that turn ends. A member of a group can be surprised, even some members of a group can be surprised even if other members aren't. So again, basically going to be up to the DM to decide how the situation arises with your specific encounter. That's pretty much for combat. Some things are changed, some things are kept similar to other editions of D&D. Kind of a combination of, I think, 3rd edition and 4th edition, a little bit of both. Takes the best things and then kind of streamlined and make it really easy to figure out how to interact with one another quickly and easily, but yet make it interesting enough and also fun enough for the players to engage with. But very easy. I think most people will be able to, whether they've played 5th edition or not, or whether they've actually done any kind of role playing whatsoever, should be able to pick up combat in 5th edition really easily, quickly, and without any problems. I think that is pretty much everything that we wanted to talk about for combat. I'm just looking through to make sure there isn't anything that we had missed that's important to talk about. damage, resistance, vulnerability. We talked about healing. We talked about dropping the hit points. Temporary hit points. One of the things you can earn is temporary hit points. Obviously, that works just like your normal hit points, but anytime you take damage, they're going to come off your temporary hit points first. It can't be carried over. There's mounted combat rules, which are very simple and easy again. There's underwater combat, very simple and easy to do that as well. Of course, all of these rules, of course, are included in the basic rules, and of course will be further expanded upon with the arrival of the Player's Handbook August 19th. So that's pretty much 5e combat in a nutshell. Wanted to go through it quickly and easily, but I also wanted to make sure we talk about all the important things, so it obviously took us a little bit longer than normal. So thanks for watching. Maybe what I'll do is have a little practice combat to kind of show you how the different rules come into play here and in the next episode. So if you want, I want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time, folks.